Master all threads by a single means, each sword for another weaving. A movement of 10,000 swords cut every Gordian knot. Leave nothing untouched. In unison they fight in a learned way. A logo of a society, a civilization or a culture is similar to paradigms in science. It is an interwoven set of theories and praxia together constituting a paideia order. Paradigms in science change more often than the logo of a culture, and the continuity and coherence of a society depends on the latter. An example may be a dance called hormos, performed by girls and boys in ancient Greece. The dance resembled a string of beads. Boys' steps were later used in battle, and girls' steps had more decorum, but the whole dance was woven into a meaningful whole that encircled projected fates of life and death. Each bed was a cultural unit of some kind that was interconnected with the rest of the patterned whole of a culture, education and ethos of a given society. It is impossible to create such a structure synthetically. It grows organically, like a garden of many beautiful greeneries over time, and is known as tradition. A concept called Li in ancient China would suit the purpose. Every destruction of the pattern damages the delicate entropy of the organized whole and leads to a devastating disease of the mind, heart and soul across the social fabrics. No longer is a hormos performed and is no longer necessary. In the age of a dying logos, when even the most resilient Eastern schools are corrupted and destroyed by the onslaught of postmodern Tartarism. The beats, the patterns and the orders were thrown into disarray. Some attempt to rush to collect the beads from the jaws of the crawling time and weave their own, but by and by it is a personal endeavor, that of a metaphysical anarch. Civilizationally generated mental diseases follow the splinters of the noosphere into chaotically warring factions, if we should even care. All our moves are strangled by the modus operandi of the current state of affairs. Yet we are all in need of coordinates, something referentially still. So each faction invests itself into one or another personality cult of mongrels, deluded pockets of belief systems, one or another political system, that weave their own tale of ignoramuses, enchanting the masses with their flawed and misfired projections, generated in castles of illusions, built on the cadavers of the mob that is in love with the grand effect of the construction from their corpses. It is a civilization lost in a labyrinth seeking or running away from the Minotaur, but he is nowhere to be found, long abandoning the maze. It is a civilization that cut Ariadne's thread because it knew better, believing that severing the past vector and replacing it with progress, not technological progress, but social logia, devaluation will liberate it. It enslaved it, just like Judeo-Christianity enslaved and captured the human spirit of high antique. So modernity abolished the pretense of Judeo-Christianity that paved the way to a theology of nihilism through its illogical doctrinary stiffness, to ethics and morality, and replaced with relativist biotechno-informational chaosmos. From the perspective of God-making, heroization or redeification, from the outlook of pneumatology, it is a tragedy. Biomass deprived of soul or ignorant of ascension rituals makes perfect slaves, because when you take their liberty away, it has nowhere to turn towards, apart from the hand that feeds its living corpse. Ultimately, even psychologically speaking, the ultimate reference of one's godhood makes us indestructible. When it is enfleshed in reality, it makes us gods. One may argue that blind ideology and religious extremism walk in the same way. Let us not play in the dirt of fundamentalists, but emerge subtle and strong, moderate and perseverant. Duration is the key word here. It is not love or compassion that should be extended, they are on fumes, but personal responsibility and commitment that should be taught primarily. We can't reconstruct what is lost, but at least we may try to extend the lever like Archimedes to make the task easier and lift more with less effort. Measure everything with ethos of golden ages as a reference frame and compare it to the present. stripping off all habituated falsehood, and you'll see one age of a monster, a faceless, disgusting mass of filth, a cacophony of wronged minds, quenched hearts, and twisted souls. A rotten puppeteer that seduces more puppets to play on the strings of this ugly spectacle. It is not a Faustian civilization. It is not a Promethean civilization. It is a civilization in which a rotten corpse went vitriolic. While sustained, it looks like a cosmetically fresh, living flesh. Among power politics, you merely have permitted amounts of freedom within the consensual frame. The early spectacle, the panopticon, no runaways, no geniuses, no liberties. When individuals go beyond that, they are destroyed. It is not moving against the societal order, business as usual. It is discovering covert things and exposing them in broad daylight that is a threat to power. Yet, exposing the mechanism of power is no longer defanging those engaged in it, nor does it illumine societies. It leaves the spectators unimpressed. They are accustomed to the spectacle and do nothing about it. It is a dangerous zone in which networks of true and valid information are drowned in a bog of paranoid factoids, personal delusions, systems of false opinions, disinformation, infotainment, misinformation, undereducation, lack of will, apathy. How can you differentiate when opinion, not reason, preference, not education, wilism, not commitment, egotism, not responsibility are enthroned? Go beyond that and you'll find yourself on unsafe grounds in which no one trusts another. The delusional system of a society is seen as a norm. Cry out and you'll be taken for another loony. There are plenty loonies already, you're just another one. If you don't understand the power games, you are a mere dabbler, a worm that meddles in things. Permitted amounts of unclothed dissidency are a mere token of appreciation for hapless victims of power. You won't be a political target if you are blind. You are not a threat if you don't undermine the status quo. Otherwise, if you know the mechanics and guts of power, who's whose controller, whose network, who's on whose payroll, who's what's wealth, who's who you know. Then you're a potential threat, because you know. If you act upon that, you draw attention. If you draw attention, you're bought in, pacified, discredited, or eliminated. We are all subject to power because we play these societal games of delusion. Try to cast the yoke off, you'll clash with petty officers of power politics. Every state, every government was about transactions of power in which societies were the resource. Liberties were granted based on the share in power and slavery based on lack of holding such. The grand game that power upholds is based on sub-transactions of illusions and abstracts. When you convince a precariat that he is rich, satisfied, or another person that he's effective while he plays in disenfranchised virtualities, he constitutes a perfect slave. A living advertisement of power. His life, like his grave, is meaningless. Nobody knew if he was truly born. The most numerous is the family of the grave. It is all about creating and selling dreams. Those who have no power to depose governments are merely subservient to this power, as it bites deeper in easy, warm flesh, rotten or not. As long as you preserve your freedoms, it does not concern you. Enjoy the spectacle when your mind, body, heart and soul will become infiltrated and enslaved. You will recognize the yoke. And it already was, if you understand it. Play along. If you can't get power over human minds, hearts and souls, you are a mere statistical event in the curse of history. Try and understand that. Maybe that's what you want to be. There is no fault in that. There is another point, that of ideas, that of ethos. Another escape route, and that is that of resilience to those of power of the modern day, that of knowledge and act, that of dissidence and engagement. Those that are remembered by the gods are those who prove themselves wielders of their ethos, whether they possess power or not. There is no excuse of disengagement other than that of inability or removal. Self-cultivation leads to the interiorization of social and ritual values. It consists of an ever-ascending path wherein one's basic vital energy, ki, is transformed into quintessential energy, or vital essence, which is itself in turn converted to spiritual energy, or spirit, shen, like a declaration of independence of the human mind from divinatory procedures, and an affirmation of personal power over one's surrounding objective conditions. Early Chinese religion, Lagerwey, John Mark Kalinowski, Part 1, Shang Truhan, 2250 BC to 220 AD. Quote, citation, from self-cultivation to objective conditions. The development of all earthly theology, the development of the perception of the gods, the forms of worship and understanding should not discredit the divine, but should be understood as a magical technology that various forces from divine fields, some individuals as masks of e pluribus unum, others separated, and still others so uniform and unique that it is difficult to say anything about them, connected and considered each other in order to arrive at an order, a tradition that guaranteed and maintained the social order. In this order were found freedom and eudaimonia, liberty, justice, happiness. The Lamentations of Kakheperesonbe, one of the 12 great sages of Egypt. Justice has been cast out, and evil is inside the shrine. The designs of the gods are disturbed, and the prerequisites are passed over. The land is in dire state. Mourning is everywhere. Towns and districts are in lamentation. All alike are grief-stricken. The back is turned on anything of worth. The tranquil are distressed. Troubles occur daily, and the face shrinks from what is about to happen. I will say my say about it, for my limbs are heavy laden. I am distressed in my heart, and it is painful to hide my thoughts about it. William Kelly Simpson and Robert Krieg Rittner, The Literature of Ancient Egypt, an anthology of stories, instructions, tele-autobiographies, and poetry. Quote, let me define the mandate of heaven, Tianmin, and sons and daughters of heaven, Tianzi, or Tianzi. It is a state in which human rulers are close to high perfection within. A reified metaphysics of divine laws that contain qualities correlated with the objective, passionate, eternal dynamic that affects individuals who master themselves in self-rule, autokraton, and act seamlessly as expressions of the divine impulse, thus ruling together with gods, as midwives between gods, earth, and man, from whose radiance dominion flows like a fountain of wisdom, righteousness, and magnanimity to the peoples. Whether we believe the stories of pharaohs who ruled together with Horus the Elder, or Chinese emperors who ruled together with Tian, heaven, and the dragon gods, Wong Guang, is a question that can only be answered by those who have had wise insight into these processes to arrive at a proper understanding. In this sense, magicians are themselves cultivated Wu, Shi, or shamans. When the rulers and the people turn away from the gods and honesty, they repeat the narratives of the chaosmos among themselves. The legitimacy is an empty formality, and the divine impulse withdraws. It is no longer among them. We can say that there were pharaohs who were really divine and ruled together with Horus the Elder, and those who were such only in mere name. This can be said of all human rulers, kings, and queens. Their characteristics and their natures, the effect they achieved, are the most important indicator. Both the sages and the rulers, the humans, when they turn away from the divine rights, from seeking of truth, philosophy, love of wisdom, transformed from semi-divine mortals back into animals, some into beasts, others yet into lesser cacodemons. They choose an aphrodisiac, generative world and destroyed it, under exploitation and unjust orders they destroy each other. In the course of time, borrowing from a Sufi parable, they forgot the seafaring people they once were. That is the state of perfection of their ancestors and their souls stemming from the divine. They decide not to exit Plato's cave, but to find exits in the labyrinths of its catacombs and come to the terms with this as a normal state of affairs. In the Dharmic narratives, they are like trapped children who are thrown into the Black Sea of Tao and sink deeper and deeper. Breaking out of the black iron prison is the first step, a cognitive discarding of the delusion about conventional reality, day-to-day business, to use Nagarjuna's words. A cognizant and balanced progress towards Eleusia is another matter, and requires hard work, commitment, experience, rite and ceremony, calling and receiving, educating oneself, struggling with active deceivers against them, while at the same time preserving one's basic means of existence, a job, an equilibrium, perhaps a family, preservation of the senses and sanity. At least we do not want to end up in the street, in prison, or locked down in a psychiatric ward. Let us not forget in an idealistic way that the great mass of humanity was not supreme, but it had a set of coordinates to strive for. In the words of Johann Palevsky, many textbooks on the religions of the world should be entitled The Religious Lives of Noble Persons. From James Lane, Meta-Religion, Religion and Power in World History. The given tunnel reality, superstructure of ideas, belief systems in the noosphere directly impact the health and outcomes of entire civilizations. We cannot say people are bad, but religions are good. It is the religion itself, the worldview, the politeia, the values, the traditions, the technology that determines the outcomes. Within such a phenomenon, there are holy men and scoundrels, but it is not the fabric of the many, but it is the fabric of the many. The people in droves working within such a framework that shows what it is really worth in stage wisdom and total sum of historical effects. Hell is paved with good intentions, that is, present and future events and outcomes in motion. This is why, for example, it is not a Western Christian civilization when it comes to Europe, but a post-Enlightenment Greco-Roman revitalized technological civilization with a retrograde Judeo-Christian grip on its throat and relativized individualistic chaosphere of both kitsch and beauty, art and science in pseudo-Dionysian affairs. This definition excludes a variety of other issues, it was merely an example. But it is meant to illustrate that civilization is not monolithic, not in these times, but is a process with many aspects functioning in unison or in complete confusion of mimetic noospheric warfare. We are all the people of Ik. If we were to be robbed of our technology, at this time by a major catastrophe, such as a powerful CME that would damage it, or a micronovae, the human world was designed not to survive impending catastrophes, but to maximize profit, not to be decentralized in a mutually supportive web of logistics, energy security, population security, food security, knowledge, education and skills hyper-preservation, but to segment power plants that are by and by largely mismanaged and largely inefficient in times of catastrophes. Controlling the populace via social engineering, surveillance, draconian laws doesn't change the situation. In the long term, it worsens it. The damage in the noosphere is done since decades. At these levels of high entropy, negentropy begins to dismantle a largely unstable system by the invisible and unseemly hand, and the gods have nothing to do with it. Well, who are those Ik people that I mentioned before? The Ik are a people of northern Uganda who live at what most surely be the extremes of deprivation and disaster. A largely hunting and gathering people who have in recent times practiced some crop planting. A morbidly fascinating case of collapse in which a former low level of societal complexity has essentially disappeared. Due to drought and disruption by national boundaries of the traditional cycles of movement, The Ikk live in such a food and water scarce environment that there is absolutely no advantage to reciprocity and social sharing. They are so highly fragmented that most activities, especially subsistence, are pursued individually. Each Ikk will spend days or weeks on his or her own, searching for food and water. Sharing is virtually non-existent. Two siblings or another kin can live side by side, one dying of starvation and the other well nourished, without the latter giving the slightest assistance to the other. The family as a social unit has become dysfunctional. Even conjugal pairs don't form a cooperative unit except for a few specific purposes. Their motivation for marriage or cohabitation is that one person can't build a house alone. The members of conjugal pair forage alone and do not share food. Indeed, their foraging is so independent that if both members happen to be at their residence together, it is by accident. Each conjugal compound is stockaded against the other. Several compounds together form a village, but this is a largely meaningless occurrence. Villages have no political functions or organization, not even a central meeting place. Children are minimally cared for by their mothers until age 3, and then are put out to fend for themselves. This separation is absolute. By age 3, they are expected to find their own food and shelter, and those who survive do provide for themselves. Children band into age sets for protection, since adults will steal a child's food whenever possible. No food sharing occurs within an age set. Groups of children will forage in agricultural fields with scares of birds and baboons. This is often given as the reason for having children. Although little is known about Ikk, this is the complete societal collapse, on the example of an African tribe. People that are addicted to technology, social services, if this collapses, the situation is the same. A human is not transformed into a beast, but a zombie incapable of handling itself. This was a fragment of The Collapse of Complex Societies by Joseph A. Tainter.